you're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I have an amazing author that is joining Live Your True Life Perspectives with his new series of books, The Adventures of Harold from the Hood. And these books are amazing in the fact that they really help to clarify and understand diversity and inclusion and the importance of that, and really connecting with the children who read the book to basically understand better their life, to understand how they fit in and how their differences, quite honestly, are what makes them unique. Jim Price, children's book author and creator of the Harold from the Hood series, joins us live today. Jim, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me. It's such a blessing to be a part of your show. And I look forward to having our conversation.
This is amazing. I love your series of books and to definitely connect with Harold. Let's talk about that. Who was your muse for Harold from the Hood, and obviously the lead character Harold?
Well, the story kind of came about from a long time ago. I'm a public educator, so I do social skills group with kids and things like that. So a while back, I was doing social skill lessons with some elementary kids, and the elementary kids, of course, had some issues with maintaining their attention and things of that nature. So I devised a new strategy that I would incorporate with the social skill lessons that I was doing with them, and that involved using a snail puppet. So I brought in the snail puppet and would, use the snail puppet as a way to have them interact and model behaviors with them. With the kids, and they loved it. I named the snail Harold from the Hood, and years later, at that time I wasn't thinking of it as being something that could be a social skill building series, but after some time elapsed, and all of a sudden I got the idea about, oh yeah, this could become a social skill building series thing. So after that, I put things together and put a plan in place, and all this time later, now it's become a social skill building series for kids.
Let's go into The Adventures of Harold from the Hood, A Trip to the Park. That was the first one I actually read, Jim, and it was interesting. I love the fact that you use the characters, that are in the story are all different as far as you have Harold, who's a snail, and then you have Jasper, who's a grasshopper, and then you have Lily the ladybug. Tell me more about where that came from, because I think that's a great way of talking about diversity in a really neat way, especially to connect with kids.
Yes, so a lot of those characters I formulated in that way purposely. And, because a lot of things in today's time, we have different races and cultures and cultural values and norms that people are attached to and things of that nature. So for kids, I thought it was important to be able to incorporate a way of having these dynamics of cultural differences be implemented in a way that kids could better relate to. So therefore, you have ideas of the bees. The bees have their own community and do their own thing, and they have their own way of connecting with nature. Same with ants. The ladybug, so you have all these elements of these differences, you know what I mean? But at the same time, they all kind of coexist in this ecosystem of being, together and doing things, separately from each other. But in the end, they're all in the same ecosystem, and they all cross paths and interact. So I purposely wanted to have something that could, steer children towards being able to have some correlation to, cultural differences as well through using the medium of the ecosystem and having, different animals, bees and things of that nature, and ants be a part of that, ladybug and the grasshoppers and stuff, because they all are part of nature, in the same ecosystem.
Very true. And it's interesting. I think it's a great take on the concept of explaining in a safe way and just kind of more of a inclusive way of diversity. And I know that this is definitely a purpose piece, Jim. Tell me more about your connection with expressing and helping kids understand diversity and inclusion.
Yes, so my social skills series is definitely about understanding and trying to connect with the ideas of diversity and inclusion in a way where you can have honest conversations and open conversations about things related to diversity and inclusion. Because I know like we say, there's still issues with race in the country, and I think having social skill lessons that teach kids about how important it is to accept others' differences, accept others' differences, be able to relate to others in a way, um, and a perspective from others being different from yourself, and knowing that in some sense, a lot of times, if you just reach out and send yourself to be having an open mind to, be wanting to know about other cultural differences or people that are different from yourself, you will find out that there's a lot of things that actually, might have in common, which could connect things further in their role of being, having some togetherness and unity in some sense.
I like that. And I feel like, yes, today more than ever, I think it's super important. And I think also kind of aligning with this type of expressive and interesting storyline that I think kids can get behind too, because it's just more encompassing, and I think that this can be very appealing. I know that you are a counselor as well. Tell me a little bit more about your background.
So yes, I do counsel kids in the public schools, middle school counselor at the time. I have worked in elementary levels and at the high school level as well. So I am a public educator. I'm also a doctoral candidate at American International College. So that is something that I'm pursuing as well. And by next year, I'm hoping that will be bring closure to that part of my academic endeavors and things of that nature. But I also mentor the youth coaching basketball, doing things, doing this community, doing outreach in that way. So I do have my hands in a lot of different things in terms of that. Of course, with the book signings and book promotional things that I do, um, that adds to the dynamic of things that I keep my hands in as well.
I think that's wonderful, and I like that because coming from that psychological perspective as well, understanding the importance of fitting in. And I think one of the things, and you and I talked about this the other day, when we were young kids, and I look back at elementary, and I look back at middle school for certain, and middle school was tough, Middle school was tough. I mean, I remember I had like these thick glasses, and I remember my mother would dress me, and God bless you, my mom is a wonderful person, but she did not like to. It was two sizes too big on everything. Let's put it that way. And so it was like the baggy clothes and the thick glasses and the Mary Lou Retton haircut and all that kind of stuff was really challenging. And I think especially in middle school, like we talked about that, kids can be really tough. And kids
Yes.
can be judgmental. And how do you feel about that? Because I do feel like the judgment, I don't think it's across the board all the time, but I do think that some of that judgment comes from the environment and family dynamic as well.
Oh yes, I mean I see that all the time. That's the new thing, where kids are dealing with cyberbullying and bullying in schools and things of that nature. And a lot of new revelations have come about in terms of how kids are dealing with things such as body shaming, name calling, um, you know, all these things that point toward like more negative connotations of development, things of that nature when we talk about kids. And a lot of kids, their peers, they want to fit in with their peers and be seen as, someone that's accepted amongst their peers. So a lot of times, um, things of that nature happen. And we know, kids can be kind of mischievous in that way, where they do, underline little things to aggravate or cause, some kind of disagreements amongst themselves in terms of body shaming or talking about you, their name calling and those kind of things. So that is prevalent. Bullying is a big thing too these days.
And the cyberbullying, that's interesting that you brought that up. Anybody out there that's listening here to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and you have a child, you work with a child growing up with this, especially in the last few years, the cyberbullying is a big thing, and that's really challenging because it's like it's you can't actually see the person. They're doing it, through the computer. And do you see a lot of that in middle school? Where the kids are dealing with that on a daily basis and having to kind of process that as well?
Oh, yes, definitely. That's the big thing now that social media has become the major platform for a lot of the kids in the schools now. I mean, you see that as being prevalent. A lot of issues, where there's stuff going on online, where they're interacting online with these different various platforms, social media platforms. They're interacting, and most of it, is kind of, bad in a sense of the way they're interacting. And then, of course, maybe a lot of parents are not really keeping tabs on what the kids are doing online. So you get a lot of that where students are, maybe going after other students in terms of cyberbullying and things of that nature. Sometimes it's hard to address that because, kids, they tend to want to hide their stuff and be more private with their things and hide things from parents and things of that nature. So it does make it a little tough.
The cyberbullying is tough, and I think in general too. For many of y'all listening, that you look back at your own growing up situation, and our lives were a little different. I remember getting a phone. Like at the end of high school, it was like a big deal, and it was like this really thick phone, and it was so cool. But it's like I kind of lived in the days of the computer and no computer, but there was still bullying at school. There were still people bullying each other because of their differences. And I think that still resonates true no matter if it's in person in the
Yep.
schoolyard or if it's on the internet or Facebook or Snapchat or whatever.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely relevant. I think that's some of the new challenges that they face in terms of, like, when I was growing up and how things were, we had no access to any computers, there was no internet and anything like that. And then today's culture where the kids have, like, a computer in the palm of their hands in terms of smartphones, and they got their tablets and things of that nature. So, I mean, a lot of that stuff is different from the backdrop of where we grew up as kids. And, these kids are now connected to all these aspects of social media, internet, and having access to a wealth of information and being exposed to so much more than when we were kids and being, coming up and not being as exposed to the things that we see kids exposed to today.
And you're right. It seems like it can come from every angle now. And the thing that I've seen, and I have a YouTube channel, but you get people can make any sort of comment. I normally get really excellent comments about things that I've helped them with, or people being extremely helpful. Thank you so much for this information. But at the same point, you can get people that are very mean. And I can only understand what it feel like, from a child's perspective. Like a middle school child dealing with differences, and not feeling like they fit in.
Yeah, and I think those are relevant points to explore and have our kids start to explore those aspects too with their parents and things, have an open, honest dialogue and conversation. I think those things are very important.
I totally agree with you. When we return, Jim is going to return with us. We're going to be talking more about the Herald from the Hood series. There's another book that we'll be talking about as well. Friends like different things. We'll also be talking about those cliques in schools, fitting in, respecting one another, and really understanding what the message is here to be able to convey that message not only, to the listeners here on the show, but also the kids, because this is all about that. It's about changing the future and working on what we need to work on to better the society and to better our situation, as well as for kids to feel like they have a voice, like they're heard. And the reason why I think Jim is so amazing at what he's doing is this is the way in the direction we need to be thinking. This is how we shine the light on situations and how we change these type of situations. Knowledge is power. And so when we return, we'll be talking more about that. Don't change the channel. Live your true life perspectives. With me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I'm talking with children's author and creator of Herald from the Hood series, Jim Price. Jim, right before the break, we were talking about, how challenging it is to fit in, honestly. And, we have those situations in school, and I know that everybody listening can resonate. You have those certain cliques, where certain people are popular and unfortunately certain people aren't, and how hard that can be. I know that you've seen it because you're in the school system, you're in it, you're dealing with it day to day. Tell me more about how that's affecting kids adversely.
That's definitely affecting kids tremendously because, I mean, like we said, children do want to fit in. They want to fit in amongst their peers. They want to be seen. They want to be heard and feel like they're important in terms of, being amongst their peers. And I think when you think about that dynamic, cliques are part of that whole picture. Some kids are going to be more introverted and more out, inward, and some are going to be, outro, like more outgoing and things of that nature. So when you look at that, thing from that perspective, you can see that, a lot of kids, they do want to just fit in. They want to be a part of what's going on, and they want to be accepted. And I think a lot of times when you have those kind of problems, like in our school, we would have, if kids are having problems and the cliques are having problems, we would bring them together and show them that communication is key to solving issues. Sitting down, talking about your problems, having open dialogue is the way to solve a lot of those issues when you're having concerns like that.
I agree with that. Having communication, being able to communicate. And it's interesting, the funniest thing about life, and I think you'll agree with me, is that, all the way through school, we all try to fit in. We do our best to try to fit in. We don't want to make waves. We want to be like everybody else, and then there comes a time in your life at a certain age where you actually take pride in your uniqueness and your differences. And I like what you're doing here, because it's like we're trying to get to that point before we get a lot older. It'd be nice if kids could, literally embrace their differences now.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think that's where it starts. That's why I feel, with my children's social skill building series, I look to, get into that domain of being able to teach kids at a younger age, about what it means in terms of diversity and inclusion, and also being able to accept others' differences and get along with others, and understand that dialogue is what's important when you're trying to solve issues or problems with someone else. It should be the first and foremost part of it, is understand that dialogue should be the answer, or should be the avenue to be able to try to solve issues, especially when you talk about kids and being in different cliques and things like that, and who's popular and who's not. And then also incorporating the idea that, a lot of these kids are on social media a lot as well.
Right, and the social media impact of that too, and how kids try to fit in, and it's tough, and I get that, but it's like opening the lines of communication is so powerful, and I find that there's a lot of folks out there, a lot of parents doing the best they can to try to open communication, trying to communicate with their kids, but that is first and foremost, and I want to talk about this, and I don't want to jump too much into it right now, but I want to talk more about how to open those lines of communication, and maybe how to help parents later on in our next segment, because I think that that's definitely an important aspect.
Yes, it definitely is. And I think that's something that all parents should try to explore in terms of, how to solve these issues with kids as well.
Yeah, how to be able to solve these issues and how to be able to communicate. So we have a lot to talk about. So Jim's going to continue on for the show and continue talking to us about some of the most important things that we need to be helping kids out with. And one of the things about this that's so great is that the best thing about it is that we're actually able to we're basically able to help kids be able to accept their uniqueness and be able to see their value. And that's what's so powerful. So stay tuned with us as we continue in our conversation. When we return, we'll be talking more about a trip to the park. Friends like different things. When we'll talk about that, we'll also be talking about how to communicate more with your kiddos and how to do that in an effective manner where they understand, and talk more about that. I know Jim's going to offer us a lot of techniques that'll be very helpful. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
This is Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're talking to the creator of Harold from the Hood series, Jim Price. And Jim, right before the break, we started talking about communication, and I think that one of the challenging things that we deal with, from my background and what I do on a daily basis, I find that there's been a lot of communication breakdowns, and I find that that's really challenging for people to express their feelings, and then maybe if they express their feelings, how they're treated after doing so. So how do we open up the line of communication with parents and kids? I know that you have a lot of background on that, you can be very helpful in creating some solution.
Yes, I think the most important one of some of the important points that are to look at is you definitely want to have your kids be able to have an open line of trust, and a lot of times I think um, we think that our kids keeping things from us is actually a detriment to having the lines of trust broken in some way. But a lot of times, having open, honest dialogue is actually the way to go, and having that child be able to have a platform to be able to feel like they can share whatever they want to share without bias or judgment. Of course, if it's something bad, of course, we're going to, take different steps and avenues to curb whatever that behavior is. But in terms of having open, honest dialogue about things that happen, like social media is a perfect example of that. Like a lot of kids, they want to stay private from their parents in terms of what they're doing and things of that nature. But it's okay, as a parent to, get into seeing what's going on online in terms of social media activity and things of that nature, because outside of just knowing and having a better idea what they're into, you know, you also have to think of the object of the online predators and things of that nature too. So it's a two-sided part to that. And I think sitting down with your child, having open, honest dialogue and conversations around what things are going on in their lives, and as well as having some kind of interjection in terms of social media and the things that they're doing and how they're interacting on social media, and exploring that with them too, makes for a level of having trust, because you rather have your kid trust you rather than them not trust you and try to hide things from you and do things behind your back, which kids tend to always do when you don't want them to.
That's funny. Yeah, let me ask you, and because I've heard clients of mine talk about this. What do you think is better when you're dealing with kiddos a certain age and they're on social media? Do you think it's good for the parent to create a social media profile for themselves and be able to look into their kids' stuff, or what do you think about that?
Well, I know now the way technology is so advanced. I mean, there's ways now for parents to be able to, kind of have access to the kids' social media platforms on their own as a parental control kind of thing.
Hmm.
I know there's things that do that. So, I mean, for me, as a parent, I'm a parent too. My 11-year-old daughter, she loves social media. She loves the platforms and things of that nature. She does her own thing with that. But me and her mom put in place parental controls so that we can not only see what she's doing, but we can also keep tabs on what she's visiting, what she's looking at, and things of that nature. So when you have that kind of aspect or dynamic in place with your child, I think it tends to make things so both parties, because the kids are going to know, hey, if I go on this site, my parents are going to see this, so they'll be more inept to be able to explore sites and profiles and platforms that they probably should not be exploring.
So basically, having a monitoring system, basically, and saying, I mean, do you just come straight out as a parent and say, hey, you can be on this platform, but we're going to have some ability to monitor what you're doing? I mean, is that what you did with your daughter?
Yeah, I have honest conversation about why, and of course, we always had the dynamic of, there are, online predators, people who are predators that are online that, who want to cause harm and stuff and do bad things to kids, and we know that's a reality. And I think, in terms of being um, socially responsible in terms of social interaction on social media platforms, I think it's good to be able to have that element of parental control and be able to, have the kids understand it's just not about being annoying and all those things like that, but it's also about safety too. Because safety should be the number one priority in terms of, when we're talking about kids and social media and how we do it. I mean, it's prevalent across country, how social media has changed the reflection of how kids interact and things of that nature, in terms of when we talk about cyberbullying and all those things that are added into the mix of kids and their social interactions these days.
That's smart, and I know that there's some concern too around 3D. I guess the augmented reality as well. People are talking about how there's not a lot of safe protections around that too, and so parents are needing to take a real proactive stance on that too.
Yes, I mean, I think those are elements too that all play a role in that, and it goes back to being able to have those honest, like open dialogue conversations, having honest, open communication with kids about the elements of how social media plays a role in their lives. A lot of kids, they overextend themselves, they're like their over dependency on electronics and things of that nature does play a role in some of the dynamics of what we see today in terms of social interaction. Like kids today, they rather communicate through text rather than have honest speaking verbal dialogue. Like at school, I've seen kids like they're kind of in the lunchroom and they're basically maybe a table away from each other and they're texting each other rather than kids just going over to each other and saying, "Hey, how you doing?" And having conversation. So electronics have definitely changed the dynamics of a lot of the way our kids interact on an everyday basis.
Very true. Very true. Let me ask you, do you think that bullying, like, outside of cyberbullying, because I think that's obviously grown, thousandfold because, it's new and that's what's happening. But what do you think about at school? Do you think that bullying still is an aspect of school on a day-to-day basis as far as face-to-face?
I feel that it definitely has, because I think after like I use myself as an example, when the pandemic was happening and all the schools were shut down, everything was virtual at that time. And so you had a long period of time where the kids were not having any kind of real social interaction besides, looking at a screen to get instruction for academics. And then you get back to the point where, the schools reopen and then you have the in-person element put back into the school settings and have the kids go back in person. And I mean, it's been such a long period of time that some of the kids, they're having a hard time just adjusting back to even, having regular social interaction with peers, which, brings out a number of behaviors in some kids and things like that in terms of acting out and things like that, name calling or whatever it may be, because they've not had that social interaction as far as like in person, face to face with teachers and peers in such a long time that it kind of causes a little some issues in that respect. And I think after that period of time, kids have still been adjusting to the idea of being back in person. I mean, you think about it, it's only been like a year. It's this school year where kids have been kind of back in the fold of being in person and actually having face-to-face interaction with teachers, whereas when they are on the platform of virtual, it just made it much more difficult. So I think kids are just still really adjusting to being back at school, being back in person, understanding social cues and things of that nature when they're interacting with peers, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable behavior in terms of social interaction. I mean, we see a lot of these things happening today, and bullying is definitely one of the things that has been a part of that transition from virtual to in person as well.
And I think you're right about the COVID situation and the kids not having social interaction. And I think also the stress and the anxiety and the fear that resonated with a lot of children when they got back to school, it comes out in their behavior and how they treat other kids.
Yes, definitely so. I think that's definitely some of the things, because I definitely do see that as being part of the changes that I've seen, because I'm a school counselor, so I get to see a different aspect of things too, just not from their academic perspective, but from a perspective of behaviors and social interactions and how those things play out in the school throughout the school day. And definitely from the point of where there was just the virtual part that everybody was learning, and a lot of kids were they would join in the classroom, have expectations academically, but I mean, when you're at home and you're, a kid gets online, he knows, hey, if I get online for 2 minutes, I'm considered present, and then I could go play Mario Kart for the rest of the class. Like that, it brought about a whole different dynamic, and I think the in-person thing is definitely something that was much more important, because kids need that social interaction. Kids, I think it's just so much better when the kid can be in the classroom and raise their hand and say, hey, I have this issue, I have that issue, I don't understand this, I don't understand that in terms of academics, or also if it's connected to behaviors as well. Like, hey, I'm having a hard time. Hey, today hasn't been as good of a day. Can I talk to my counselor? Things of that nature. So you see those things play day in and day out with students, and I think it has been an adjustment when you go from looking at a computer screen for a long period of time. That's your academic part of what they're doing, and then you go back in person after such a long period of time. There's definitely got to be a transition of trying to reintegrate the feeling of being in person, and seeing a teacher in person and things of that nature, and being around peers that you may have only seen on a computer screen, and now you're seeing all these people in person. Those could be transitions that are difficult for kids.
Well, and I think also too, kind of the concept, like if you think about from an adult perspective, many people take out their stress and anxiety on their spouse, their significant other, their family, their
Yes.
friends, because they don't know how to process this emotion. And I think obviously kids don't really know how to do that. That's something we need to work on with them because they don't know how to process their anger or their fear or their sadness.
hmm And you definitely do see that. And I think with me, that's one of the aspects of my job that I do enjoy a lot, is being able to have the counseling aspect of interaction with the kids, working through their issues, working through their problems, having them understand that, okay, yes, it's okay to be angry and upset. It's just the actions behind your anger and being upset that can cause the problems. And, trying to work with them to be able to think about other avenues or other ways that they can be able to navigate their anger, frustration, anxiety, and things of that nature to a place where they get back to being, kind of, back on track, and being able to navigate the rest of their school day in that way, in terms of academics too.
Very true. Let me ask you, I want to switch gears a little bit because I'm very interested. I'm trying to figure out because I'm interested in where do you see, Harold from the Hood, where do you see the series going? I mean, what do you see for the future?
Well, I mean, there's definitely going to be future iterations of the series, as I'm currently working on right now. And also, my series has been adapted into a movie screenplay, which I've been working on behind the scenes to have that happen, to eventually have it become a full featured animated movie in a sense. So I've been working on that and the backdrop and everything. But I do want to continue to put out, social skill lessons that help children to be able to nurture their social interactive skills with others and their peers, and be able to, have it be something that's not only a learning experience, but be entertaining to kids and families and parents as well. So I think those are a lot of things I'm moving toward, trying to work toward as well.
That's awesome. I can't wait for that. How do folks find you? So, the listeners here on Live Your True Life Perspectives, how do they learn more about you and find the series and get information?
Yeah, so I can. My book series is definitely selling on Amazon, and also, if you want to, you can go to my website, which is Jim Price Books Books education, and you'll see all my books. I have coloring books available as well, and all the information about myself in terms of interviews and things I've had, things of that nature.
Oh, that's neat. Coloring books are neat, and that's awesome. And that's awesome, Jim. That's really cool. And I'm looking forward to the series. I like the idea of the screenplay. I like the idea of moving it into that direction too, because that'll be fun. And I think that kids and adults can connect with your characters very well.
Yes, that's the thing. I do want parents and kids to be able to relate to the social lessons in the books, and I think it's important that they do have that openness to be able to connect, and that fills a bond with kids and families too.
Very powerful stuff. Very powerful. Don't change it because we're going to come back and Jim is going to offer his golden nuggets of wisdom. 3 golden nuggets of wisdom, or 2 golden nuggets of wisdom, as many as he would like to talk about, just to share with you, because I think everybody comes with their purpose and wisdom. And, purpose is about getting to know ourselves at every level possible. And once we do that, we're able to share our gifts and be able to connect with other people and help other people move along in life and connect and see how there is no differences. We're all connected. We're all part of the same. So stay tuned. We have more coming up, more golden nuggets, and looking forward to that. So don't change the channel, not right yet. We have more to talk about from the Harold from the Hood series as well as the golden nuggets. Live Your True Life Perspectives. With me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, Jim Price has joined me. He's a children's author and creator of the Herald from the Hood series. And, this time is the time that I ask everybody that comes on my show to give us, a golden nugget of wisdom, something that they think is extremely important, something they really think about, something that can really connect with us. And so, Jim, it's time. I'd like to know. So share with us, some deep thoughts that you have.
So one of the nuggets that I always like to share with people, I know there's a lot of people in the country, there's lots of people around the world that are dealing with past traumas in their lives that they have maybe not completely released or healed yet. And I always say to people, like, if you focus on self-love and healing those inner traumas that may not have been released yet, and also while incorporating prayer to daily routines that you have, you can definitely see a dynamic shift in your life that will head or lead to a much more fulfilling future. So I always tell kids, hey, it's about self-love, understanding, loving yourself, loving who you are and exploring who you are, and also being able to heal past traumas. This goes not just for kids, but for adults too. There's a lot of parents and adults that are have dealt with trauma in their lives, and they have maybe not completely healed those traumas, but being able to reach out and do the things that need to be done to heal those traumas and to get on that path of loving yourself, self-love, because they always say self-love is the best love, and I think life experiences will show you a lot of things and put you in a position to be able to try to deal with a lot of those things. So that's kind of the encouraging words that I always try to give to people in terms of when they're interacting with me, and that's what my series is about too. People accepting other differences and showing love to other people.
And I agree with that. And I think, unconditional self-love is so powerful. And it's the first thing that you have to do to get that is to be able to figure out how to give it to yourself. And it begins with working to embrace our differences and understanding who we are. And it's interesting how, if we can get kids to embrace their differences early on, it can be so powerful, because I feel like so many of us live the majority of our beginning of our life, not being happy with what makes us different or what makes us stand out or what makes us unique.
That is so true. Some people just underestimate those elements of everyone is special in their own way. Everybody has their own skills and talents. And sometimes it's just good to try to learn and be able to tap into those talents, understand those talents, grow and nurture those talents to be able to help others be able to find footing. And in some way, when you're doing those, people are doing those things, they inspire others to do those things as well. So, when you have a dynamic like that, you're actually, doing the work on yourself, and you're also inspired others to be able to want to, have that path too of, understanding their talents and things like that, maybe getting to the point of where they're saying, okay, I know my purpose, and what I'm supposed to be doing in terms of my life and things like that. And I think those elements are just so important and play a role in a lot of how we, perceive ourselves and things of that nature.
It's so awesome, if we could live in a world where everybody just kind of accepted everybody's differences and saw the value in that. And I think that many of us try to strive for that on a daily basis. And I think that your series is going to be helpful in helping children understand that and helping the communication, because I think that these books can bring a communication as well with the adults in their life and the, the family dynamic as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely so. And so I always continue to nurture that and talk about that and spread that message wherever I go in terms of interaction with families and kids and things of that nature. And I think those things have been successful thus far.
Jim, I have just appreciated so much having you on the show and connecting with your series and connecting with your work. I think you have an excellent purpose.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
And I look forward to hearing what happens with Harold next.
Me too.
It'll be good. I'm looking forward to it. Jim, thank you so much. Wonderful time. For everybody that's been listening, Jim Price, creator of the Herald from the Hood series, which I think is so powerful, and it's at the perfect timing. It's right here, right now. So check it out. And, again, it's like if you want to listen back to this show after it's been on the radio, you can listen to the podcast. You can go to ashleyburgess.com, ashleyberges.com, or you can check out any place that podcasts are housed: Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the list goes on, as well as iHeart. And so we can catch that as well. So if you miss anything or want to listen to the show again, definitely catch that. In the meantime, it's about us. It's about communication. It's about connecting. It's about inclusion. It's about understanding other people's diversity and seeing that not as a detriment, but something that can actually help our society keep pushing forward to being the best we can and realizing how we are all connected. I hope that you've connected with this show. Please share it with your family and friends and live your true life perspectives. With me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 3 shakes.